just did a gone in 60 seconds on this, and I'm going to have to break it down a little bit further than that because 60 seconds isn't going to help. Okay, so purpose and intention. When you're giving somebody feedback on something, A, did they ask for it? I mean, when you're hired as a coach, it's a little bit easier because they've asked for it. They're paying you for it when they're personally paying you for it. Now, if you're a team and it's not like a college team or a travel team, they haven't necessarily chosen you per se as the coach. You're just the coach. The same thing is if you're a teacher in a school and they haven't chosen you. It isn't, like a college. They haven't chosen you by paying for you. They just happen to live in your school district or something. It's a little bit harder. Same thing as a parent. If you want to give feedback, it isn't always necessarily welcome feedback because they're not paying you as a parent, right? So your purpose and your intention always need to be stated in advance. For me as a coach, it's easier because people will literally come and pay me, and so once they pay me, there's an investment and they want a return on that investment. And so what their expectations are that I'm always going to be doing things and providing feedback on things to get them to move forward. So it's always what's the concept, what's the thought process here, what's the main goal? The main goal is growth, okay? Sustainable progressive growth. So my feedback is going to be within that framework. And so since I know that those are the rules of my communication, I try to make them as direct as possible, but fitting for what the person receives while as feedback. What kind of a learner are they? You can go Myers-Briggs on the whole thing. You can do different personality typing feedback, things like that. Make sure that you're communicating in a way that's going to be useful. The thing is, though, one of the other things that I like that Melissa always says that I've heard for years before she said it, which is you can't ever say the wrong thing to the right person, and you can't ever say the right thing to the wrong person. I don't know if I just said the same thing twice. Anyways, the point is, timing though is a little bit different. So a lot of people don't want to hear this, but you can say the wrong thing to the right person at the wrong time or at the right time. And the point is there what's the opportunity? Is there a moment of opportunity? There comes a point though where you either have to create a situation where a person is going to pay attention because it's going to be attractive enough, or such a adverse situation that they're now paying attention, but they'll have to have a little bit of moment in between from the battle to lick their wounds, and that's when you can get the feedback. If they're still in the battle, they're not going to hear it. It's tough. It's too real. It's too tough. Now the other thing is, and when you're a person that is not getting paid by that person directly, it can be a harder situation, and the reason why is they didn't pay you directly, so they're not intending, nor are they looking to get that for feedback from you. And maybe they don't see you as having that purpose in their life, or that purpose anymore. Often when they get older, kids will be like, you know what, I know better than you, or whatever. Or they're not at a place yet where they're like, oh, I can respect that. Or it's too real still, like we said earlier. And so when you give feedback, I say, when you see what you say, be ready to pay. And it's, the cost can be pretty big sometimes. Energy can shift, and the amount of time that people want to invest in a relationship with you can shift. So when you're giving feedback, I want to just say this much. Always make sure that you frame it with somebody to let them know your purpose and your intention, and that you're truly there from them either way, whether or not they're going to listen to you or not. And then the other piece that goes with it is make sure when you're identifying things that you're giving feedback on, let them know that this is what you're seeing through your lens. This is your experience. It might not be accurate, okay? So let them know. This isn't letting them off the hook, but let them know that it may not be accurate, but this is what you've been seeing over whatever period of time. And then when you're giving them this feedback, also remember the other thing is that it's what they're doing. It's an action. It's not them personally. It's an action that you see them doing. And that's really important, because that's not as personal. That's not attacking them in any way, shape, or form. That's just saying, hey, listen, this is what I saw that you did, and I assume that you're trying to do this, but this is what's happening. And the last piece is, and I think I've forgotten this all because this is just off the cuff. This is nothing written down or notes on anything. This is notes over decades. The last thing though is be prepared that they're going to need some time to think it over, and you might have to revisit it. So after you send that communication to them, whether it's talking with them face to face, it's over the phone, it's a FaceTime, it's a text or an email or whatever, because they might be in a position where you can't, it might even be through snail mail. The thing is, once you do it, you have to let it marinate. You cannot follow it up with something that's going to disintegrate the message. And what by I mean is, like you see in those James Bond movies, they'll say, after you read this message, it'll disintegrate. Well, whatever, it'll explode. A lot of people do that. Don't do that, especially as a parent or as a coach or somebody else who has not been hired, or a teacher, not been hired by that individual and paid by the individual, because they're not invested yet, and they're not sure probably where you're coming from on purpose or intention, because they haven't decided it in advance of that relationship. And so what happens is we often go in and we say things to try to like make them know that we love them, that we're there for them to support them. But what happens is when we say these things, it throws the cushion underneath the reality that we were trying to get through to them, and now you've undone the entire thing. And now it gets confusing, because now when you say other things in advance, they'll think either you're disingenuous or they think you're doing it for shock value, in which case they'll just say, wait a second, let's just wait for it. This person's going to end up apologizing afterwards. It's like the person, that does something horrible and then they apologize afterwards. If they don't change their action, they don't mean it. And it's the same thing when you give a message to somebody else. If you say something and you kind of take it back afterwards, they think that you didn't mean it. When in the end, you're worried you're going to lose or devalue that relationship. And that's not what you're trying to do at all. You're trying to help the person. And so in order to try to help the person, stand firm where you are and just let it know. But hey, listen, maybe you don't know everything that's going on. I'm sure you don't. Maybe you're not seeing things quite as they're happening. Also, they're probably not seeing those things either. Often the things that we do, if we don't review them, we're unaware of them. So this is why I say journaling is so important. Most young kids are not going to want to journal. A lot of them will say, it's a waste of time, coach. But it's really, really helpful. I can honestly say some of my greatest mistakes are things that I did, but then that I took back because I felt that it was going to be too much for that person to ingest, but I might not have given them enough time to, to digest that meal. And so that's why, good coaches are patient and they take their time and they understand the timing of things is important. So I'm not saying that you can say the wrong thing to the right person or the right thing to the wrong person, but a lot of it does have to do with timing.